Hello there. Today's single malt review sees us staying in Ireland but heading north of the border to Belfast.
Yeah, the Irish triple. Or are we? Are we heading north of the border? This is another whiskey that became more interesting the more I looked up here. This is McConnell's, 5 years old. That's an age statement you don't see too often. An entire 5 years. Blended Irish whiskey, and yeah, it really is all about the Belfast coming in this rather good massive glass shillelagh here. It's really quite a unique bottle. I saw this one pop up, and it was strikingly sort of indie looking for most Irish whiskey, which I guess it is in terms of its brand. But we'll get into that as we taste.
So a Northern Ireland whiskey. The company apparently dates back to 1776, but was out of business for a time following something of a fire.
Yeah, something of a fire that razed something of most of the distillery to the ground and burnt up 500,000 gallons of spirit in the process.
That was like what, 19...
Oh, I think that May of 1909. Don't quote me. That was minutes ago that I read that article. I can't be expected to retain that sort of knowledge. And yeah, then the double whammy of Irish prohibition, and alas, the McConnell's was laid to rest, existing only as a brand and a long lost sort of piece of Northern Irish distilling history. But they have resurrected it, or at least the Belfast Distilling Company has. But they don't have their own distillery, not yet. They're still waiting for it to open. That's the plan, is to all get it in there. So this has been made by the folks not too far away in the Great Northern Distillery, which produces a lot of. It's almost like a contract distilling industry, I suppose. They produce a lot of whiskey for people that want to pay them to do it, and they'll bottle it under their own brands. And so they'll see probably a lot of trade from people like McConnell's, who are building their own distillery but aren't quite there yet, so they need a bit of spirit to bridge the gap and kind of keep the brand alive while they do so. Interestingly though, I looked it up, and it's not by a great deal, but the Great Northern Distillery is in fact in Republican Ireland. So as much as this promotes itself as the milk of Protestantism, the Northern Irish spirit, it's not actually made there. It's sort of a man in a truck drives it approximately a few kilometres up the road, and then it's in Northern Ireland. So take that as you will.
It's a very curious test for the extent of Brexit's influence on border control.
I'm sure they'll figure something out. Of all the Brexit borders, that one's probably not the most heavily policed. The man in the truck will probably still make it.
So we have it's a blend, but it is an age statement blend at 5 years.
It is 5 years, which I'll take. People sort of sniff at young age statements, and they refuse to put them on the bottles. But hey, if it's 5 years old, at least let me know. Because if you don't, I will always speculate low. If there's no age statement, I will always assume the worst skullduggery.
And curiously, 100% ex-Bourbon casks.
Yeah, totally bourbon, which is not too surprising. That's definitely the Irish style. There's precious little sherry maturation goes on in there. I mean, there's precious little sherry maturation that goes on anywhere in the world these days, the rarity of those casks.
Yes, the sheer abundance of bourbon casks, since bourbon requires by law a fresh barrel every time.
Yes, indeed. So, and it doesn't quite have the usual trifecta of whiskies that go into Irish blends, which is the grain, the pure pot still, which is just pot stilled malt with a portion of unmalted, and then malt, which is just basically the Scotch way of doing things, only done in Ireland. This one is two of the three. It is grain and it is malt. There is no pot still in here.
Okay, so it's in its component parts much closer to a Scotch whiskey.
And that's very much the model for Belfast, for Northern Irish spirits. That's really the mode for Bushmills, which is they're the big boys up there producing the Northern Irish spirit that most people are familiar with. They do a lot of what we'd consider just single malt distillation up there. They don't really truck with the more typical Irish pure pot still sort of shtick. They tend to just make it and get on with it, which I suppose makes sense since they're closer up there to the British way of doing things. But this one is you'd have to say that's being presented as a craft whiskey, so we'll mark this one pretty hard. And hopefully they can surprise us with some good quality whiskey. 42% is a peculiar strength.
Yeah.
It's not high enough to be unchill filtered, so it's not peculiar for that reason. Often we'll see stuff that's 47.4 or something just baffling, and the reason for that is usually they've been titrating that down, and they've said, oh good, we can put this on the shelf and it won't cloud up, but we can still have it walk down to here and say unchill filtered. I'd be very surprised if you got one all the way down to 42 without some disaster happening. So, but we will put water in and see. So we'll run it through at paces. But on the nose here, yeah,
slightly gentle, a little bit beguiling. There's maybe some.
It's gentle, but it's got there's a weight.
There's a bit of heat behind it. Mostly it's peaches, a little bit of apricot.
Yeah, stone fruit definitely. There's a good bit of pastry on here as well. There's
pastry, interesting.
There's a buttery pastry, kind of more cooked than anything else. But yeah, that really combos with those soft stone fruits.
Right.
It's very grainy. It's quite. There's a lot of not grainy in that it super smacks of grain whiskey. That's certainly there, but it's grainy in that it's actually quite grainerific on the nose. There's actual sort of seeds going on here. It's got wholemeal kind of a character, which I quite like.
But not the same buttered bread influence we found in
No, it's
Jameson's
not
or
as,
Tullamore.
there's not an oiliness here per se, but there is a roundness. It's got a good full roundness, and it's not. There's no real jagged necessarily to it.
It's a little bit of alcohol heat, which Moray knows it. It's coming through as kind of like a curiously strong peppermint kind of a influence.
Yeah, peppermint going sort of spearmint almost.
Yeah. Well, I've run out of things I can smell on this, so I'm going to go straight in and taste it. Ooh, wow, something happened a few seconds into that. I'll have to go back and try again, but something really transformed. There's a full-on metamorphosis.
There's really quite a lot going on that palate. It's a real two-stage palate there. It's initially very fresh and quite herbal.
Yeah.
That mint really comes smacking out there.
Then there's a whopping great spicy alcohol heat erupts just a few seconds into it. It's quite hot. I had to almost suppress a cough there. It was really tickling the palate.
Yeah, it's pretty vibrant. I'd say this one actually calls out for a bit of water.
That has got some kick.
Start with just a wee dribble.
In terms of things I'm actually tasting, there is a fair bit of stone fruit still there. Honey.
I think your peppermint really comes out quite strongly on the palate as well, and there's that flintiness has come back as well. It's quite
a minerality,
rocky quality to the whiskey.
Oh, this has really found its footing.
That's where it's at. Yeah. That's where it's at. Just that we're probably 37% now. So slightly underproof with the water, but now it's just super fruity, bouncy.
The peppermint and spearmint are really finding their footing now, though. Those are both there. Thankfully, without a catastrophic clash you get in real life if you add peppermint and orange juice in the same mouthful.
Oh, yeah. Something bad happened. I've never tried that.
It is famously terrible. It is abominable.
Oh, do you get the toothpaste thing?
Where you drink some orange juice after having brushed your teeth.
Okay, then I do want to know what you're talking about. Yeah. The natural
mercifully is not happening here.
Yeah, that's.
But there is still, there's a mintiness and a fruitiness.
That wasn't bad without the water, but it is profoundly better with the water. We splash is definitely the way to enjoy this one. Oh, that's really quite vibrant now. It's still quite flinty, stony. Imagine sort of splitting a river stone open, and that sort of slightly mineral ozone-y almost note that you
minerality get. I personally associate with the really dry German Rieslings. Like the Riesen Valley stuff, not the sweet kind, but the very dry sort.
Yeah, that's. I think this has maybe taken on a little bit of. Usually, this one's quite low. This one has, I think, developed while it sat around me slowly ebbing away on it, while it patiently waited for review. This one's been rolling around the cabinet for quite some time now. We've only just gotten to it, and I don't remember it being quite this dynamic.
Maybe it has taken on some properties from just that
Possibly.
sheer amount of
Just a
air
wee bit of
exposure.
oxidation has given it has been beneficial, which we've seen it before.
Yeah.
But
Well, how is it gelling with your memories of it when it was still freshly opened?
I remember this not being remotely as complex.
Right.
I remember this being much, very, very pleasant, but quite simple. But there's all sorts of distinct notes popping out of it now. So I think just that wee rest in the bottle maybe has helped it along. But yeah, that's really quite compelling. That one, to relate this to the last one we tried, which was the Dewars, with that one really sort of not presenting much of a conversation, not really an engaging whiskey. This is very engaging, in addition to being quite pleasant to
Yeah,
drink.
the Dew was mild in the middle of the road, whereas this has got so many more standout points. It is interesting that this one is all purely bourbon cask, but still has that range and complexity, all the other factors in there, which are making me think more of the Jamesons, which had a mixture of casks.
Yeah. Now this one I really like. This one definitely takes the Irish trifecta, as it should, being the other two being bargain basement budget ones. This one being, we'll call this mid-shelf, not shockingly expensive by any means, but definitely a craft presentation and a craft ask for the price. But no, this one's 84 for me. This one's really, considering 5 years old as well, I think we're slightly forgetting just how young this one is. Not to say there isn't older whiskey in here to top things up, 5 years being the minimum age of what's in here, but that's what they've put on the label, so we'll go with this as a 5-year-old whiskey. It's doing a hell of a lot for something that's, well, for a Scotch, we'd call halfway there practically. So yeah, I really like it.
As for me, I'd rate this 81. I'm not blown away, but it has some impressive properties. It has got some unique quirks. It's still a fairly, not a phenomenal amount of flavour. It's not a heavy hitter, and it's not wildly old and mature and complex and alluring, but it has enough going on, but it warrants a second sip.
Yeah, no, I think good stuff, and it will be really interesting to see once they have finished their distillery and are producing spirit from it, whether the style changes. If we've learned anything at all, it's that the distilling scene in Ireland is really popping off. New distilleries sprouting in every second town over seems to have this new historic revival of distillers going up, and Irish whiskey hasn't remotely seen the price explosion that other ones have, so I applaud that. I think a lot of people may be drinking a lot more, or at least they're hoping they will, Irish whiskey in the future, and if the quality stays up, that might be a really good option, because we sure as hell can't afford Japanese whiskey anymore, and the other, Scotland is sort of still gradually eking its way out into the stratosphere of price as demand increases worldwide, and Scotland remains a tiny speck on the globe. It's going to be international distilling like this, even though close to home as it may be, that saves us from the price hikes. So yeah, good on them for producing something extremely worthwhile. And I think that's just about all the Irishes we've got through. We've got to the bottom of the... It was Irish all the way down for the start of this one, but we've broken through. We've broken through to the Scotch layer. So enjoy our content while we enjoy the Scotch layer, which I've just made up. Anyway, Slanger, we'll be right back.